everyone, it's Julia, and I'm back today with another sweatshirt transformation. I decided to sit on a stool so you can actually kind of see my face today instead of having it cut off like it is in some of the previous sweatshirt transformation videos. But this is a color seafoam, and it is again a color comfort sweatshirt, and I will link down below where I get my sweatshirts so you can kind of take a look. I've done a variation of this design for a couple of seasons, and it's always been really popular. It's simple, but it's kind of artsy, and just you can kind of play around with some different fibers and fabrics. But I don't know if you can see it or not, and I'll zoom in here. But I actually cut slits down the side of the sweatshirt, and then I weave the fabric just like you did back in the when you're a kid and we did the basket weaving. You go up and down through the slits. And similar, I opened up the bottom like I have been done in the past, just by putting a vent in the bottom, cut the bottom band off. The vent is very nice just for moving a little bit. It just kind of makes it so that it's not so tight around the bottom. I also cut the neckband off and did the same kind of a slit, and did a weaving a little bit at the neckline too. Also, I decided to do some distressing on the side of the sleeve by actually doing slits and cutting. And this gets, just as it's washed, it gets more distressed and kind of a little bit more textured. Really a fun look, and you see that a lot now, just kind of a distressed look, and it kind of ties together with the slits on the side. So I'm going to zoom in and you can kind of see maybe the details a little bit better on this, and then we're going to get started. I think you can see this a little bit better now. I did cut the bottom band off, did my little vent or slip, folded it back, and you can kind of see how I've put that yarn or the ribbon and also the fabric kind of in and out like a basket weave. And then I took it to my sewing machine and I just free motioned it, kind of closing in any of the little gaps and making sure that everything is secure and in place. And the sleeve has the same kind of slits on it. I did cut the cuff off and just edge finished it with my serger. And then I like these sleeves cuffed. I'll show you that the neckline. I again cut the neckband off, put a slit, and then sewed it down using just an applique stitch. And again, the two slits in the front, and I was able to just weave that fabric through there, and it's all attached. So I hope you enjoy this. We're just going to go over the steps. We're going to start with a little bit of the deconstruction. I'm cutting the band right below the stitching line. So I'm going to be leaving this seam on. This kind of gives a nice finished look to the bottom of your sweatshirt without having to rehem it. Onto the cuffs, I'll be cutting right below that stitching line and cutting the seam off on the cuffs. I will be edge finishing these with my serger and then rolling them up. You can also edge finish just by placing a small hem at the bottom, or even like a zigzag or an applique stitch would work for that. To cut the neckband off, I usually start in the back of the shirt. The Color Comfort sweatshirts have a covered seam in the back. I'm going to be cutting above that seam, and also making sure not to cut the tag. Once I get beyond that covered seam, I'm just going to continue cutting above the stitching line, just removing this band. To cut the bottom slit, I like to section it, kind of figure out where the center of the bottom of the sweatshirt is, and then make the cut approximately in the middle between the center and the side seam. And on this size sweatshirt, this is a large. It looks like it's approximately 5 inches. So that is my cut line for the little bottom vent, and I go up approximately 4 inches on this one. I'm going to cut that first. And then the neck line cut, which is cut in the center front on this shirt. I'm lining up those shoulder seams, which is actually a drop shoulder on this sweatshirt. And then just kind of getting the center mark here just by folding it. And I'm also using my pencil just to make a little mark there. And then I'm going to be going down on this probably about, an inch and a half, maybe 2 inches. Make a little dot, and I'm going to be cutting between those two lines. Now onto the slits for the weaving. I like to take my pencil and mark about an inch from this bottom slit. And then go up a ways, probably about, let's see, how much is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 8 inches. And make another little mark. Now I fold between those two marks and pin. And now I have a nice fold to be able to cut my little slits. I'm going to be starting my slits on the first little pencil mark. I don't know if you can see it, but I can see it, and ending somewhere around the second little mark. The only thing you have to be aware of is it needs to be an even number of slits in order to get it to work out right. So even number of slits, and I'm going in, I'm making a slit approximately every ½ inch, and going in, not quite a ½ inch, about 1/4 inch. 1, 2, 3, 4, counting to myself here. I got approximately 18 little slits on that. And this isn't even, and it doesn't, you're never going to tell if it isn't. They're not completely cut evenly or spaced evenly, and it's really not a big deal. You just want to be able to weave that fabric in and out. The one on the neckline, I do similar, but I'm only going to cut 2 slits on that, making a mark about 3/4 inch down from the bottom of the slit, and then another one about 1 inch away from that. And then again, I'll be folding this so I can see those 2 little dots on the top, putting a pin in place. And on this one, I'll be going right through that little dot. And again, approximately a ½ inch or 1/4 inch in. Now the slits on the sleeve, you don't have to be mindful of how many you're cutting, whether it's an even amount or an odd amount, because I'm not putting fabric through that, although you certainly could. It would be really kind of cool to put fabric through that too. But I'm not going to be doing that on this one. I'm just kind of lining up these 2 sleeves. And most of the sweatshirts, when you get them, they kind of have a natural crease line on the top of the sleeve, and I'm just going to be using that as my guide. And these are going to be cuffed, so I'm going to roll that cuff up so I kind of know where I want to start my slits. And I just kind of keep the two sleeves together, and I'm just going to be making my slits. When I'm up as far as I want on the top sleeve, start cutting my bottom sleeve and using that as my guide, just so that they're somewhat the same. When they're cut, I do like to distress this a little bit just by kind of running my hands down it. This is going to get much more distressed once it's washed, but I kind of like that look. And I certainly want my customers to know that what's going to happen to this a little bit, so they're not, so they're just more aware. My next step is taking this to the sewing machine. I'm going to be using a kind of, it looks like a blanket stitch, somewhat like an applique stitch, and I'm going to be stitching the neckline down almost straight across. So it's going to have kind of just a straight line there. I'm going to do the same to the bottom slit. This one I just tack back, and I'm going to be stitching up, and I don't stop. I stitch up and all the way back down. And again with that applique stitch. A zigzag stitch would work also, or a feather stitch would be really cute on that. And then it's to edge finish the cuff. One of the things you can do with the cuff if you don't have a serger is you can just turn this, make a narrow turn, and just straight stitch this in place. You can roll it under and straight stitch it in place, or you can edge stitch it with a blanket stitch. I'm going to use my serger on that, and when I get back with all my stitching, the next is onto the fabric, and I'll show you how I cut my fabric and how it's woven in. Here's the stitching on that. It just finishes off really nice. And the bottom vent. Onto the fabric. I had used the same fabric for embellishments on another sweatshirt transformation, and I'll link that up in the cards, the iCards, so you can take a look at it. But I really love how it looks with this sweatshirt also. And I'll probably, in my little summer shop, display the two shirts kind of together, because they're going to make for a nice merchandise, nice look. And it has this 1-inch strips, which is so convenient. It doesn't matter though if you don't have, you can use absolutely any fabric for this. But I'm going to be cutting up on just right on the line on this, and we'll be edge finishing this with my serger on both sides. If you didn't have a serger, what I would do is, instead of cutting a 1-inch strip, I would cut a 2-inch strip and then just fold both ends, press and top stitch them down. If you're using a batik fabric, which is the same on both sides, front and back, I would probably not even edge finish it. I would even maybe rip it, and so it has a start of a fray to it, and then just weave that in. That makes for a really just fun detail, and I love batik fabrics because they are the same on both sides, and they just get better with washing. I'm going to go serge this, and I'll be back and show you the next few steps. Have you all heard of a bodkin, or do you have this in your Notion box? This is really handy for pulling elastic through casings. It works great for this particular thing too. I'm also going to be putting in a piece of ribbon. When you use ribbon or lace or whatever, just make sure that it's color fast and that it doesn't shrink, because if this would happen to shrink, it would bunch up the whole shirt. And I'm just laying the ribbon on top of the strip here, and putting my bodkin. The bodkin has like a claw on one end, and just gonna clamp that down, and then a little washer where you move it up and make it tight. And then it's just a matter of going through these slits. Has a tendency to curl, so I'm just going to take a moment and get this flat. On this top edge, I'm just going to turn this under. Put a pin there, and when I free motion this, I'll make sure just to catch that in place there. And then the bottom part, what I like to do is give myself a good 3 or 4 inches, cut it off, and I'm going to turn this up on the inside of my sweatshirt, right in that little vent, and put another pin there. And again, I'll make sure to catch that when I do my free motion stitching. The neck is done very similar. I have just a little bit of this piece left here. I'm starting from the bottom slit, going up, and then again I'm going to just turn this on the back side, or the underneath of the top of the sweatshirt, making sure I catch that when I do my sewing. To edge finish this bottom part, again, I'm just going to give myself a little bit of room, turn it under, and I will also catch this. I'm going to set up my sewing machine now, so you can kind of watch me when I do my free motion. I will be just kind of meander stitching all over this, going onto the sweatshirt fabric, going onto the regular fabric, over my ribbon, and just keep going. And people ask me, like, well, isn't there holes in this? Well, yeah, there is holes in this, but it's not going to fray or rip or anything. And if you're fearful that your skin is going to show, wear a tank top. That's what I kind of tell my customers. I usually wear something underneath my sweatshirts anyway, whether it be a t-shirt or a tank top. Honestly, you're not going to see anything. So I'm going to go and I'm going to set my camera up, and let's finish this up. I have my embroidery foot on. My feed dogs are dropped, so I'm going to be doing the motion on this, starting at the bottom of my sweatshirt, removing this pin first, making sure that everything is lined up underneath here so that I'm going to be catching all of this in when I'm sewing. And I'm just going to start. I'm going to just kind of take my time at first, and then actually it goes really quickly. I'll be using both our machine stitching, meander stitching across the sweatshirt part and also across the fabric part. And so enjoy. I'm just going to turn on some music and let's get started. The meander stitch somewhat acts as a decorative stitch. I kind of did a little curly thing down here. It's also fun to use your multicolored thread on this kind of a thing and just really make it artsy. Another thing in the past that I have done is adding little beads to each one of the little sweatshirt fabrics, so you can have like a little bead. There's so many things, or little buttons would be fun. Another thing I've done is the neckband that I've cut off. I've actually strung that underneath, so it's kind of all the same color, and that was a fun look too. So just be creative. This week I've been working on, I cut off all my bands, and I have so many bands, but I'm designing a purse using my sweatshirt bands. So make sure to subscribe and stay tuned for that. It's taking me a little bit of trial and error, but it's coming along. So thanks so much for watching, and I hope you have a chance to create today and to try this. Bye.